Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for Tuesday, April 9th, 2019. I'm Dr. Julianne Malvo, sitting in for Roland. He's on the Tom Joyner Morning Show cruise. I'm jealous. Congress holds a hearing today on hate crimes and the rise of white nationalism. Two black women provide powerful testimony. A new poll says Americans have negative views of the country's racial progress. More than half say Trump has made race relations worse. We'll break it down. Senator Cory Booker introduces legislation to form a commission on reparations. He says we need to do more than merely acknowledge the past. We must deal with the discrimination of the present. When black neighborhoods get new stores and apartments, black residents are often priced out. It's called gentrification, and some see it as a positive trend. Not me. We'll talk about it to an activist who also thinks it's bad for us. And I'll talk with the president of the University of the District of Columbia about who gets into college and why. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Hi, I'm Dr. Julianne Malvo, sitting in for Roland. He's on the Tom Joyner Morning Show cruise. The House Committee on the Judiciary held a hearing today on hate crimes and the rise of white nationalism. Not a hearing likely to have happened if the Republicans had held the House. Voting matters, period. One of the first witnesses was my friend, powerful advocate, Eva Paterson, who's the president of the Equal Justice Society in Oakland, California. She summed up the problem in just a few powerful minutes.
Some of the things I'm going to share with you are difficult to hear, but they are facts. In August 1619, 400 years ago, 20 enslaved Africans landed at Jamestown. In order to sell, rape, and beat these Africans, white Americans, and I know none of you own slaves, had to see us as less than human. Thomas Jefferson said the following about me and my ancestors. They have no tenderness and love, they are intellectually inferior, they are physically unattractive. Thus began a narrative, says law professor Shauna Marshall, that black people were only good for physical labor, we were inhuman and violent. This was a narrative necessary in order to justify slavery. White supremacy has been a feature of the mistreatment of Native Americans for years, and it was applied to Africans once we arrived here. From the beginning of our country's inception through the Constitution, the Founding Fathers knowingly and consciously embraced slavery and white supremacy. Politics, including the three branches of government, have played and continue to play a role in the perpetuation of white supremacy and the continued mistreatment of black people, either through action or inaction. In 1857, the Supreme Court in the Dred Scott decision reinforced white supremacy by saying black people have no rights, that white people need respect. Ultimately, slavery ended, the Reconstruction era happened, black men could vote, and then politics reared its ugly head once again. Federal troops were withdrawn from the South in order to place Rutherford B. Hayes on in the presidency, and the reign of terror in the South began. Once again, I'm a Southerner. The Ku Klux Klan came about. They were white supremacists. They lynched people. They made sure that black people could not vote. For years, the NAACP asked Congress to act on anti-lynching laws. Congress refused to act. Fast forward to 1964, our fellow Texan got the Civil Rights Act passed, but when it passed, he said, we have lost the South for a generation, he said, of Democrats. 6 years later, the Southern strategy was devised to encourage white people to abandon the Democratic Party and vote for the GOP. It was a shrewd and effective political strategy, but it drove yet another wedge between black and white people. Fast forward to 2008, America elects a black president. Unfortunately, this proves very unsettling to many people who have felt superior to black people when there's a black president and a black family in the White House. In 2015, Donald Trump began his campaign by calling Mexicans rapists. He called for a Muslim ban. When white supremacists marched in Charlottesville chanting, "Jews will not replace us," and "blood and soil," which is straight from the Nazi playbook, Mr. Trump said there are good people on both sides. He recently called asylum seekers animals. Dylan Roof goes into a place of worship and murders black souls. Jews are slaughtered in Pittsburgh. Muslims are slaughtered in New Zealand. We need the Congress to stand up and act. Ranking Member Collins, I was so delighted to hear your strong statement against white supremacy and that the Republicans took a lead in denouncing it. But we need you to do more. Out there where I live in California, we're not so sure where the Congress stands on white supremacy. So we're delighted that you're speaking up. I'd also like to address Chief Justice Roberts, who dismantled the Voting Rights Act in Shelby versus Holder. He said racism had been eradicated. That simply is not true. I hope he will talk to Justice Judge Bernice Donnell from the Sixth Circuit, who writes extensively on racism. We hope that a majority of you will want to give the country a signal that we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go, Eva. That's my homegirl. That was powerful. Check this out. The exchange between Committee Chair Congressman Jerry Nadler of New York and Kristen Clarke, who leads the largest committee for civil rights under law, detailing how the Trump administration downplays hate crime.
We need the government to step up and do more. We also need the FBI to do a better job incentivizing local law enforcement agencies to turn over the data so we can capture the hot spots where hate crimes are happening around the country. And then finally, we need to see this Justice Department using its bully pulpit more often to condemn hate when it happens. As a civil rights organization, we're deeply disturbed by the Justice Department and this Attorney General and prior AGs prior to him. We're disturbed by their deafening silence in the fake of hate incidents that we've seen across the country. We're going to continue to bring pressure to bear to ensure that they do more and encourage Congress to use its oversight authority here as well. The final thing that I will note is that we're deeply concerned about the FBI's Black Identity Extremist designation. This is mere distraction from the very real threat of white supremacy that we face today.
Also testifying was Candace Owens of the Trump PAC, Turning Point USA. That woman had the nerve to bring her grandfather with her. Her basic line was that the rise of white nationalism was fake news, just a campaign tactic to spin up African Americans at election time. Ted Lieu, Democratic Congressman of California, asked her why she was there. Let's look.
In congressional hearings, the minority party gets to select its own witnesses. And of all the people that Republicans could have selected, they picked Candace Owens. I don't know Miss Owens. I'm not going to characterize her. I'm going to let her own words do the talking. So I'm going to play for you the first 30 seconds of a statement she made about Adolf Hitler.
I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets, the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a National Socialist. But if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. Problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German.
All right, so my first question is to Ms. Hirschenoff. Ms. Owens said, quote, if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. So when people try to legitimize Adolf Hitler, does that feed into white nationalist ideology?
It does, Mr. Lieu. I know that Ms. Owens distanced herself from those comments later, but we expressed great concern over the original comments.
Great.
Two more things about the hearing. It was streamed live on YouTube, and the comment section was so filled with hateful speech, white nationalist speech, that YouTube had to shut it down. And we're having a hearing about whether or not there's any white nationalism. All right. And take a look at Kristen Clarke watching Candace Owens testify. Talk about shade. Joining me on the panel today, Malik Abdul, Vice President of the Black Conservative Federation, and Cleo Monago, social political analyst and activist. So, guys, what do you think? Especially, Malik, I'm going to ask you first. I just have to, about your friend Candace Owens. I don't know if she's your friend or not, but y'all do share some predilections.
No, I've never met Candace. You know, there are things that you just really shouldn't get into, and I know that she did try to clean up those comments about Hitler. You know, whether it's Candace or anyone on the left, you know, I don't think that we should be using Hitler references any more than we should be using slave and plantation references. But one point that Candace did make is because the hearing was also about hate speech. And one of the comments, you know, she did drive in on that point about hate speech, and we do get a lot of that from the left. You know, just me, I'm pretty sure in the comment section here on this show, very soon, I'm going to get some of that same thing because I get it all the time here. So she did have a point about hate speech. You know, conservatives generally aren't protected under that umbrella of hate speech, and so you don't get people to respond in ways that you do on the left. So she did have a point there, but, you know, the Hitler references and things like that, I just don't think that those type of things should be part of the discussions that we're having.
Cleo, Ms. Owens, when she testified, said that there was no such thing as a Southern strategy. My first question is, where did that child go to school? But you don't have to answer that one. You know, when you hear this revisionist history coming out of people's mouths, what do you think? And how do we combat that?
Well, I wish them luck. Eva Paterson was brilliant. I've heard her speak before, and she's always brilliant. Everything she said was true. And I wish them luck trying to fight against a deaf devil who does not care about whatever they have to say, against them defending themselves, sustaining their power, and against them trying to break down any kind of opposition to them. Good luck with that. I use my energy in other ways, and it focuses on people similar to Candace Owens. I think one of the black people's biggest problems is self-hate crimes, which is different than hate crimes.
She committed a hate crime on her grandpa.
Well,
by bringing him. Why would you bring your grandfather as a prop to something like that?
Well, because people who are dealing with self-hate issues are very serious about deflecting issues of racism, et cetera, and being on the side that they're on. They're desperate. They bring grandfathers where they can bring to make their case. But self-hate crimes is a consequence of black people being too focused on assimilating and adapting to oppression instead of being more relentlessly focused on dealing with the side effects of oppression on the black psyche. People like Candace Owens are the result of neglect in terms of getting her to understand the issue of racism and its impact on black people. The murder of Mr. Hustle in LA was a self-hate crime.
Yes, it was.
And there has not been enough talk about self-hate crimes, which I think are more of an immediate problem than the systemic problem of white supremacy, which is not going anywhere. The best we can do is get a closet white supremacist to act liberal and act caring in public. Then they go into the voting booths and do what they really want to do, because people want power. And they have power, and any type of threat to that, people are going to do all that they can, including acting like they like you, so they can go do what they really want to do to get you to relax.
So, Malik, what do you think the significance of these hearings were? As I mentioned, if Republicans had maintained power, we would not have had these hearings. Right. So what do you think the significance is?
I'm really not sure, and believe it or not, I watched the entire hearing. I was trying to navigate between that and the bar hearing.
I thought you meant a bar.
Well, somebody did tweet, "Don't ever trust a man with a bow tie." So,
but you know, I'm really not, you know, and I listened to it, and I'm really not sure. You know, they did provide a space to talk about these things, but as far as the Democrats provided a space to talk about these things, but I don't know how far that actually got us in the, and when I say that, you know, when I'm listening to them, you know, it's, of course, they went to talk about Trump. So they talked about the fact that, well, you know, it starts at the top, Trump doing things to encourage it and things like that. I think that, you know, hate speech in and of itself is apolitical. You know, it's not it doesn't. It's not Democrat. It's not.
Say that hate speech is apolitical?
Right, a hate speech itself. You know, it doesn't have a Democrat or Republican or anything like that.
Hate speech has a very different impact. If I call somebody a honky, I mean, whatever. If someone calls me the N-word, that is invoking lynching. That's invoking all of that.
Right.
So it's a different thing.
Somebody like me,
it's a false equivalency.
Right, but I don't think so, because, and I go back to my point that I was making about Candace. You know, okay, well, maybe not out, you know, the H word or the N word, but I'm often, as a Republican, I'm often called these things, whether it's Uncle Tom, Coon, anything that you...
Okay, does it hurt you?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so...
No, but because it doesn't hurt me, because I have, you know, I'm from Mississippi. You know, I have Teflon skin, so, you know, these things don't hurt me because I approach it knowing that you don't know me. You don't know me to make those type of assumptions, but the assumptions they do make. So if we're talking about hate speech, I mean, there are really hateful things that are often said about conservatives that we just don't talk about.
I'm not a Republican and ain't getting ready to join, but I'm not a Democrat either. But I agree with parts of what he's saying, and even milliseconds of what Candace Owens said in terms of her being chased away by some black folks at a restaurant or something like that.
Yeah.
I do think that people...
Well, civility is gone. That's the issue. The civility is, I mean, whether
people think that cruelness and viciousness and calling people names. I mean, I've seen the amount of names people call you, and I tried to get a scale that could weigh them, but I can't find one that powerful. But anyway, my point is that I think that we need to take, that's a whole other conversation, but we need to take a look at this co-abuse phenomena in this culture where both people are aiming to claim that they want to change society for the better, but there's a lot of viciousness going on here that's very dehumanizing on both sides. So that's true.
Well, we'll give you that, but I think it's a false equivalency. I give you your point, but I do think it's a false equivalency. But we're going to move on. A quick update on a story we reported on yesterday. The 3 church fires in Louisiana were all set deliberately. All set deliberately. So on to our next story. The Pew Research Center is one of the most respected polling organizations in the world. One reason: it's a not-for-profit. It's not a for-profit business. It's funded by trusts set up by long-deceased members of an oil-rich family. So they spend a lot of money on their polls, and they're good. Today they released Race in America 2019. They polled over 6,600 adults, 6 times the number usually represented in polls. The headlines: Americans have negative views of the country's racial progress. Surprise, surprise. More than half say Trump has made race relations worse. Again, a surprise. Drilling down, here are their key findings. 49% of white people and 73% of black people believe that Trump has made race relations worse. 37% of white people and 78% of black people believe our country hasn't gone far enough in giving blacks equal rights with whites. 56% of white people and 71% of black people believe race relations in the United States are generally bad. 58% of white people and 84% of black people believe the legacy of slavery affects the position of black people in American society today a great deal or a fair amount. 7% of white people and 50% of black people believe it is not too likely or not likely at all that black people will eventually have equal rights. 65% of people believe it's become more common for people to express racist or racially insensitive views, while 29% believe it's about as common as ever, and 5% believe it's less common. 45% of people believe it's more acceptable for people to express racist views or racially insensitive views, while 31% believe it's about as acceptable as it's always been, and 23% believe it's less acceptable. Here's another surprise, y'all. Compared to President Barack Obama, most people, by a 2-to-1 margin, think Trump has made race relations worse. So y'all stunned about any of that? You know, Cleo, you study all this stuff and you talk about it a lot. This poll seems to be stating pretty much the obvious. The one thing that strikes me is the gap between what white folks think and what black folks think. It's like we don't even live in the same country.
Well, you may remember the polls that came out. Several polls came out after the Michael Brown murder in Missouri. Well, and that was after Trayvon, and that was after Tamir, and white people still said that they felt pretty good about police behavior in this country, even in the wake of all these murders. And black people, obviously, it looked just like these polls right here in terms of the difference in perspective. And like I said before, one group looks at the group as protecting them, that's the white folks, and doing their due diligence to make sure that they stay powerful and stay the most honored group in this country. And the other group is the victims, if you will, of the police system. And so this is the same thing. But one thing I want to say real quickly is that I think it's tragic that black people are still depending on white people for equal rights. I don't believe we should have white people determine our rights. We should just do what we need to do. Now, I know there's things similar to redlining and there's gentrification and all these things, but we could gentrify our own communities if we weren't dealing with self-hate crimes.
Well, and also there is a wealth gap, Cleo, that really does, I mean, if we look at the gentrification issue, which we're going to talk about later on, but the wealth gap is very significant when we talk about what we could do for ourselves. I agree with you that we should not be depending on white folks to do anything, but there are laws that discriminate against us. There are structures that make it more difficult. We'll talk about some of that later in the show about education and other things. So while, you know, I love the way your brain works, and we agree most of the time, but And I don't believe in asking white folks. I'm James Brown. Open up the door and I get it myself. But I think that the way the poll is looking is really looking at the distribution of stuff. To me, distributional issues.
But I'll be quick because I know my brother has some wonderful things.
I
went from rats and roaches to a life that has, relatively speaking, some level of means. And I know what I did to do that. And I ain't no superhero special person. Anybody can do it. So that's another show. And I am real clear about white supremacy and racism. I mean, it's something I talk about all the time, with it being a big problem. But I still say a bigger, more immediate problem is internalized oppression and black people having taken on a white supremacist self-concept. And when we get over that, we'll be better off as a people.
I agree with you. I mean, but if you swim in racist water, some of that racism is you're going to ingest some of it. So we're racist, or we have been racially affected. I won't say we're racist, but we've been affected by the racism. We have basically inhaled some of our negative self-concept. Inhaled, when Eva opened up by talking about what Thomas Jefferson said about our people, I mean, those stereotypes have been with us for a very long time. But let me get you in here. Your boy is seen as responsible for the worsening of race relations. I know you disagree.
I do too.
Yeah, I mean, I do. And it, for real, it actually doesn't really surprise me. I would be interested to see what the numbers were, how Americans felt about race relations when Bush was in office. I would be
they worse.
Yeah, well, I would be interested in seeing those numbers. Chances are that they may not be as large or the gap as wide as it is now under Trump, but I would imagine that under a Republican president, those numbers are pretty much the same. We shouldn't be surprised that there are white people who don't want to deal with the elephant in the room. Condoleezza Rice has talked about the elephant in the room. Colin Powell has talked about the elephant in the room. Racism exists. White supremacy. White supremacy exists.
Oh, so y'all agree? Why y'all agree on something? This is a good time for me to take a break. These brothers are agreeing. Y'all write this down.
I said that. No, he mentioned the elephant in the room, and I said they were riding the elephant. I'm not necessarily completely agreeing with them.
All right, we're going to a break. We're going to come back to answer the question: who stopped the go-go music in Washington, D.C.? We'll be right back.
You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
So there's this intersection in D.C. at 7th Street and Florida Avenue. It's ground zero in the battle over gentrification of black neighborhoods in big cities. And D.C. is the most gentrified city in the country. The Metro PCS store, that location has been playing go-go music on loudspeakers outside the store for 24 years. I've danced out there a few times myself. Go-go is a D.C. music specialty characterized by live performance and a strong, unique rhythm, really a beat. When T-Mobile bought out Metro PCS, the new owners told the store owner, Donald Campbell, to stop playing the music. According to Campbell, T-Mobile told him that a neighbor threatened to sue, bring it, the company over noise from the outdoor speakers. So he stopped. Everybody else is mad because we missed the music. Other neighbors, other African-American people were like, There was a protest last night to support Donald Campbell and Go-Go. And my guest, Ronald Moten, peaceaholics and all kind of stuff, a D.C. activist, is here to talk to us about gentrification, about how we feel when our mostly black neighborhood gets a Whole Foods market, a whole lot of young white folks. I'd have to throw that in there. I mean, if you follow me on Facebook, I occasionally talk about the Brads and the Beckys, the dog-loving colonizers who have more money than heart. More money than heart. But Ron Moten, you organized this protest. Tell us about it.
Yes, I've been dealing with this for over 20 years. Our culture has been attacked for more than 20 years in Washington, D.C., and now people have a lot of heart, and things they couldn't say before they're saying now. He was attacked over the last 5 years as they built all these big luxury condos and apartments around his building, as though people didn't come there and hear the noise before what they call noise. We don't call it noise. We call it music. It came from Africa. You know the beat that came from Africa? So we don't call it noise. We call it music, right? So they start complaining, and it's almost like what I tell them. I say, okay, in order for you to move in Washington, D.C. now, you have a lot of money. So that means you have a lot of money to move back where you came from. So if they don't like the music, why did you get upset with something that you knew was there? So they're culture killers. You look at that apartment
that you live in, you heard the music then. So
and that's what you do when you move in a neighborhood. You go and see if you like is the crime bad? Do they have enough amenities and things like that? So if you heard the noise, why did you move? So it's the entitlement and privilege, some people think, that they can come and crush people. And they've done this all over America. They've done it in Harlem. They've done it in Chicago. They're doing it in D.C. And we're saying we got to take a stand. And it's not just about this location. They've done it at another location called the VIP room. That's been in D.C. for 50 years.
Miss Addie's place, the Island.
They tried to shut them down.
Wait a minute. They said that there was too much noise on U Street. If you walk down U Street, there's nothing but noise. And this was a Jamaican Caribbean restaurant that had the best wings. And she was an older lady. She
couldn't fight.
She just finally said, you know, I'm
on U Street, the Islander. Yeah, the Islander. They did the same thing.
I'm in my 70s. I'm out of here.
They did it to the Masjid Muhammad, the mosque. They said the praying was too loud. They've been doing it for 30 years. I mean, like, these people have some nerve. Like, you come to our city, we were here paying taxes, we were here doing all these things when nobody wanted to be here, and then you come here to a vibrant city and tell us to get out?
But brother, there was a whole country here full of vibrant people.
Right.
They first came here talking about manifest destiny. Right. So they're just being consistent. You got to give them credit for being consistent. We need to be consistently resistant and be just as consistently resistant as they are. Gentrification is annihilation and conquering.
Right.
That's what it
is.
And
it's white supremacy.
And we can't. And I'm not saying what you're doing and not doing because I don't really know. I'm just meeting you for the first time. But we need to organize with bodies against this whole thing, because this is a conquering of us.
Well, I tell you what I'm happy about. Over 45,000 people to this moment have signed a petition in one day. Black and white people.
Is it online?
Yes.
Tell us where it is. Okay.
Don't mute DC music. And the thing about this is black and white people have come and told this one white guy and the few bad people who told me that we are disrespectful because we are playing go-go music in their community.
In their community? Wait a minute, isn't this right by Howard University?
It's their community.
Yeah. In their community.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to tell you something. Right across the street, there are two rooftop party places where if you walk past there at 1 o'clock, you hear all this noise, but they don't have a problem with that. And the problem is when they see many colored people, they have a problem.
Well, can I just say something just very quickly?
Sure.
Because we've heard this. I remember whether it's U Street or there were people who moved to China, Gallery Place, Chinatown, to complain about the street performers and things who were out there, knowing that they were there. But particularly with this particular, I think it's important to point out that the problem is that there's a loudspeaker that is placed outside the store. And so that's what people are protesting.
For 25 years.
Whether it's 35 or 45 years, the fact is that the loudspeaker is placed outside the store. They were asked to place the loudspeakers inside the store. And so that's where people started to...
And they're not breaking any laws.
Right.
So they didn't break any ordinance laws. So if you're not breaking the law, why put your speaker inside? I mean, we've been doing this in this city since I've been born. I remember people used to go around with their big boom boxes. Don't mess with our culture. Don't mess with our history. If you don't like it, go back to the boring place that you came from. Go back to holy hell.
I just want to bring up, over the weekend, Dr. Ron Daniels of the Institute for the Black World had a summit on gentrification. I participated in the town hall meeting on Friday evening. We had people talking about Newark, talking about Houston, talking about the fact that this is happening all over the country. Part of this is a lot of people would like to think of gentrification as an economic phenomenon, but in order to think of it that way, you have to really address the issue of the wealth gap. So, Ryan, when we were in Newark and people started talking about solutions, the solutions really have to be connected to deliberate public policy on the part of the city. So what do you think should happen?
So we're having a meeting on Thursday at Check and See regarding to address this, because my thing is, even in Anacostia, we're trying to buy our property. If you don't buy no land, you don't rent nothing. So our goal is to buy, and our legislators and everybody had to put their money where their mouth is. They give a lot of people money and resources to acquire this land, even with the Opportunity Zone. One of the things I like about my friend Jimmy Kemp, who is a Republican, but his father was a great Republican, who are black and white people, he said, if this legislation doesn't help the little people who do a lot with a little bit, it's not doing anything. So that's what I'm saying. If we're not helping the little people who get up off their butts every day and work hard and want to empower themselves in their community, don't want to commit crimes, don't want to put their hand on action for nothing, if we're not empowering them, then we're not doing nothing.
Well, you know, brother, as you know, I admire your work. I understand that you've got a hot date in a couple minutes and you have to leave us. So we're going to keep talking about the topic, but we'll get together again. And email me the information about that Thursday meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
I may show up.
Okay.
So this is an issue. You know, one of the things that really must happen is that vacant land that the city owns should be redistributed in a way that's sensitive to the wealth distribution.
Absolutely.
You know, there's vacant land here in the district that our mayor never met a developer she didn't want to slow dance with.
Absolutely.
That she wants slow dance with. Get real close.
But you know, the DC has the largest, what they say, intensity of gentrification.
Yes, it does.
Also, DC also has the largest, I think it's the wealth gap in the country. That was a study that was published last year. So these things definitely exist, and I think that there are things that we should do to be able, that would help us deal with issues like gentrification. And, you know, they're like Ron, he's doing a great job. You know, there are a lot of people who are really vested in making sure that the opportunity is there. And so I'm glad that he mentioned Jimmy Kemp, because we had a conversation about, Jimmy and I had a conversation about Ron to actually talk about those things. So he's right on point with that. We may not agree about having the loudspeaker outside the store, but as far as gentrification and providing opportunities, I'm with my brother all the way on that.
Well, absolutely. One of the best examples of resistance to gentrification came from New York City Councilman Charles Barron. He represents East New York. And one of the things that he's done, I mean, they have used various metrics to talk about what's affordable. Because, you know, sometimes in New York, they tell you 80 grand is affordable. Right. You know, if you make 80 grand, well, who makes 80 grand? The average income for black folks is like $35,000. Yep. So, you know, who makes 80 grand? Right. So anyway, he has shown clear resistance, and he showed me, you know, some of the documentation. He and his wife have an interesting one, too. She's in the assembly. He's on the city council. Oh, wow. And so they keep East New York real. Oh, wow. But that was a really good example of how you can resist gentrification with active public policy and legislators who are conscious. My problem with what we have happening here in D.C. is that half of these folks ain't woke.
And I will say that that particular corner that we're talking about, you know, if you guys remember that corner, that particular block right there has gone through some transformation even over in the past 20 years. I mean, they've really cleaned up.
Yeah, but they've been playing that music, and they shouldn't have to stop playing their music. Cleo?
I wanted to first ask, before I gave my comments is how successful has the brother and his wife been with countering the gentrification monster?
Very. His is the only, I'm going to get this partially wrong, but in East New York, they have had an increase in black population and a decrease in white population. He said, and I didn't run them out myself. Oh, wow. But in any case, basically by making more housing affordable and by defining affordability linked to the income that people have. But by doing that, you've got people who are getting 2-bedroom apartments for $1,200 a month in New York because they make $40 grand a year.
Well, also brilliant strategy. There might need to be a demonstration project for other people who are resisting gentrification. But I also know, and this may or may not be relevant, but that East New York is not as desirable as Manhattan.
Right.
It's not as desirable as being
not even as Brooklyn. It's next to Brooklyn.
Exactly, and being along the Hudson River. And along the Hudson River, particularly uptown in Harlem, used to be predominantly black, and it's very desirable. Most places by water, white folks like water, and places by water, they always want to take from us. But I want to mention that along with public policy and having demonstration projects being important, we really need to find ways to get people to be viscerally resistant to the conquering strategy. Because this brother is doing what he's doing, but there's not a mass of people in South Central where I'm from, or Crenshaw where I'm from, or right near where Nipsey Hussle was murdered, in the streets going, hell no, blankety blanks, you ain't taking our blank.
There you go.
I mean, we have to learn to value where black people are and value black geography, as well as valuing ourselves, which is why you're not going to hear me stop talking about the self-hate crimes that we need to purge away from behaviorally so we can feel valuable enough to say, hell no. Right now, we're in question about, hell no, maybe on Thursday, no. Yeah, maybe on Saturday, maybe. On Monday, hell no. We got to be hell no 7 days a week.
No, I mean, there is a tentativity about our resistance.
Because there's a tentativity about our value, whether we're valuable.
Well, you know how much trouble I've gotten into with my Brads and my Beckys. You know,
I say Biff and Becky, but I think it's a more white name. But yes,
you made a good
people write me and say, "Why do you do this? This is hateful."
But it's not hateful.
But you made a point about that East New York when you were talking about the desirable location. One of the challenges here, and for people to know, I'm the Republican who lives in Ward 8, which is DC's most under-resourced ward. And one of the challenges, even for people like me who are concerned about gentrification, is the they place the concentration of affordable housing. And they're all, most times they're in Ward 8. And so one of the things that a lot of Ari Teresa, who's the guy friend of mine who filed the $1 billion lawsuit here, gentrification lawsuit in D.C., some of that actually has to do with being able to disperse the affordable housing throughout the city. But of course, they're not placing affordable housing in Georgetown. They're not placing affordable housing in
Shaw.
And places like that. And so the problem is that you end up having pockets, of, and I don't want to say poverty, but almost there, if you will. And so
you can say poverty and get away with
it. Well, poverty.
Yeah, poverty is not a bad word. In fact, we have to use the word poverty more often because I want there to be a presidential debate on poverty. Reverend William Barber has said time and time again, we won't talk about poverty.
That's right.
Finish your point because I got to move on.
No, well, I just wanted to say, so in talking about things like poverty and where the poverty is concentrated, one of the challenges is that these communities aren't self-sustaining. So you end up having a lot of mixed income communities, which I really support. They're doing that a lot in Ward 8 now. So we just have to look more holistically about this and not just
there ain't nothing holistic about colonization. I'm going to move on. New Jersey Senator and presidential candidate Cory Booker is frustrated with the conversation around reparations. He tweeted yesterday, "I've been unapologetic in my belief that this just can't be about acknowledging the past. It needs to be about actually confronting racist policy that persists right now in the present. Because if we don't, we cannot guarantee that our future will be any different than our past." His comment, by the way, echoes what the Pew poll found. 50% of African Americans think we will never have equal rights in America. Today, Booker introduced a bill to form a commission to explore reparations. The bill is a companion to a House bill introduced by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas. Her bill was a bill that to take off of H.R. 40, which was first introduced to Congress by Detroit Congressman John Conyers in 1989. And Clarke, I'm going to go to you first because H.R. 40, since 1989, and this right into your self-hate
crimes.
How come all the Congressional Black Caucus have not signed H.R. 40.
That was a rhetorical question, wasn't it? and I'm relieved that you asked me this question when there's not a member of Congress sitting right next to me as it was last week. And I want to be respectful and honor the intentionality among the Congressional Black Caucus. But the bottom line is people in this society have been taught to assimilate and integrate and try to bring blackness into whiteness instead of recreating it in ways that affirm black people because they don't want to offend white people. Anybody who's afraid to talk about reparations, which is a clear case to break down in terms of its necessity, is afraid to offend white people. It's kind of like when you hear black people, grown black people say, today a white girl at my job did so-and-so. Some of them go, reparations. You know, they whisper it because they don't want to offend the invisible white person that's nowhere around because they're in our psyche. And it does go back to self-hate, crime, residual effect. From my perspective. I know that sounds serious, but black folks in Congress, why wouldn't you support reparations? I mean, John Connors broke down, and Dr. Malveaux has broken down in no uncertain terms the legitimacy of it. Even Ta-Nehisi
Coates.
That brother, whose name I don't want to mess up anymore, who wrote the piece in Atlanta.
Oh, that was a brilliant piece.
Absolutely brilliant. Backed up with statistics and data that justified the importance and legitimacy of reparations. Why don't you members of Congress go get that, borrow a copy of that? Because the question is, why haven't you said anything? And why are we waiting for people to run for president?
For it to come up.
For it to come up.
Well, we even have white members of Congress. Jerry Nadler is one who have endorsed H.R. 40, but we have many of us, African Americans, who have not. But, this is a historic first because the legislation has been pending since 1989, never having enough co-sponsors, never coming to a vote. But this is the first time that it's been introduced on the Senate side. Yeah. So now there's a companion bill. So that's very powerful, which would not have happened if there were not African Americans in the United States Senate. Malik, I know you got something to say, because you always have something to
say. I would probably say that we may not have it now had Cory Booker not been running for president. As far as the discussion of reparations, if people want to form a committee to study it, I think that's fine. What I think where I would channel my efforts are really looking at the things, whether it's the Bush administration, Obama administration, or even the current administration, the steps that they've taken, look at it from a policy perspective. So things that we know where there are disparities in the system, try to adjust it from that end. I don't know, maybe we will. I don't know if we'll ever have, we'll never have full agreement on reparations. And because you'll have people, even on my side, to say, well, I didn't do it, I didn't own slaves.
Yeah, but you institutionally benefited from, no, you didn't own it. Enslaved people, white folks who are watching, no, we know you didn't have any slaves.
Right.
We think you didn't, you might have. But the bottom line is, if you created a racist society that has disproportionately benefits one group of people as opposed to another, that's the argument for reparations right there.
And I don't want people to think, because I've seen it. When I was a Democrat back during George Bush's administration, I followed the things that they were doing.
Now, what happened to you? Did they stop you on your head or something? No, we're not going to talk about it.
He got tired of the Democratic Party taking black people for granted, among other things.
Well, that's reasonable.
Yeah, it is reasonable.
But I look at those things. The federal government has taken steps to address these sort of disparities. Local governments have taken steps to address these sort of disparities. Of course, we still are where we are. But I think that a real keen focus on policy and making sure that we're doing things to address these problems, and it requires not just Republicans. We just had the conversation about D.C. being the largest, having the largest concentration of gentrification or whatever that is. This is pretty global as far as the United States is concerned, and we need to really. And I would challenge my Democrat friends. Challenge your local politicians. Don't just allow these politicians in our areas to around campaign season to come and talk about, crime is this, and I'll fix that.
Okay, in full disclosure, let me let y'all know that I am a member of the National African American Reparations Commission that was founded by Dr. Ron Daniels and the Institute of the Black World. We've been meeting over the course of the last 5 years really to bring this issue up. Many folks don't even, like you said, whisper reparations. Right. But you're going to get the last word on this subject, Cleo.
I was going to say that I hope that this gift from Trump, I think the gift is from Trump that we're talking about reparations, frankly, that we've gone this extreme because it's considered extreme. But I want to say that I hope it has the effect, but with more meat to it, that what happened when Iowa, was it Iowa that supported Obama and then black folks jumped aboard?
Iowa.
It was because members of Congress, to make my point really quickly, members of Congress, black members of Congress were running behind Hillary Clinton, and even the brother from Georgia,
John Lewis
was right there behind Hillary Clinton. But then when white folks in Iowa said it was all right, it validated him, and then and Lewis literally said, I changed my mind, in front of everybody, because it became safer to do it. Hopefully it'll become safer to talk about reparations among the congressional membership black folks, and they can say it out loud now in front of everybody, and manifest it into being now that it's being talked about by Mr. Booker, and a white woman that you just mentioned, whose name I forgot.
I forgot to. But let me say this. The ACLU actually is starting a blog series on reparations. I got the American Civil Liberties Union. I got an email from them this morning. Dr. Daniels said, will you write a piece? So they're asking many of our NARC members to write. So the ACLU sees itself as having a role in dealing with this. And so the issue has become somewhat more popularized. Now the gift is to learn history. You know, because we don't know history and we deny history, and that becomes a gift. We're gonna go to a break, and we come back. I'm gonna talk to an HBCU president about the college admissions scandal, but more importantly about the myth of meritocracy. We'll be right back.
Hey fam, want to check out Rollerbach Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Rollerbach Unfiltered. Press play.
Every man prays in his own language, and there is no language that God does not understand. Composer and bandleader Duke Ellington.
Gee, I love these producers at the Roland Martin Show, because for today's HBCU Giving Day, the school is Bennett College, my school. Bennett College is located in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's a women's college, was founded in 1873. Notable alums from Bennett include Dorothy Lavinia Brown, Mady Norman, Beverly Buchanan, Tony L. Cook artists, and many, many more. And of course, y'all know I used to be the president, as did Dr. Janetta B. Cole. It's a wonderful place. We just turned a corner, but we still have some crisis. Please donate to Bennett College, www.bennett.edu. That's www.bennett.edu. By the way, Brother Mason has some thoughts about some of this in terms of reparations and what needs to happen to our historically black colleges. We'll talk about that in a minute. Calling all HBCU alumni, students, and leaders. Enter the Ford Motor Company HBCU Mobility Challenge and win $25,000 for your school. Building on their long-term support of HBCUs, Ford is looking to improve in HBCU communities through innovative solutions. The winning program will receive a grant of up to $25,000 to implement their proposal. The deadline to apply has been extended to April 15, 2019. Go to fgb.life for more information and to apply. Ford goes further in our community. Now, moving on. When the news broke that wealthy parents were paying to get their children admitted to Ivy League schools, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, I forgot, I misread that, weighed in on Fox News saying all education should be merit-based. Well, that's all well and good in Betsy world, but the reality is wealth, not merit, guarantees entry to top schools. That, according to my next guest, who wrote an open letter to Secretary DeVos outlining America's real education scandal. Welcome, Ron Mason, president of the University of the District of Columbia. Thanks for being with me.
Happy to be here, Dr. Malvo. Good to see you again.
Likewise. So you wrote an open letter. To what end? Do you think she'd really go read it?
No, it wasn't really. It was addressed to her, but it was printed in Diverse magazine. And I just wanted to make the simple point that it's impossible to have a merit-based education system in a country that is driven by three basic practices, one of which is wealth privilege, two of which is white advantage, and three of which is black oppression. And when a country is driven by those three policies, basically, it's impossible for merit to be in place at all.
So what you have an equity imperative at the University of the District of Columbia, which is the District of Columbia's public university. So you've got this equity imperative. How would it work? Because what you want to do is make sure that everybody has access to that which is considered merit. How does your imperative work?
Yeah, so we're trying to redefine higher education, and our goal is that every student that walks through our doors will reach their highest level of human potential, knowing that potential changes over time. And so, you know, to pick up on the conversation you guys were having, there's a reality of what 200 years of racial oppression has done to black people in America. And the biggest reality is that it's denied us the ability to generate wealth.
Right.
And so if you look at the wealth gap in America, you can see how all the challenges that face our community really stem from that basic fact. And so we're trying to build a university that doesn't rely on standardized tests to judge natural talent, that doesn't look to U.S. News and World Report rankings to determine whether or not you know, we're doing our job. And you know, we're creating pathways to livable salaries, but knowing that some students will come in through our workforce door, some will come in through our open enrollment door, some will come in through our selective admissions board, but every door is going to lead to the next door, so that you can get in and get out and get in and get out and come back, you know, whenever that light goes off and you're ready to go to the next level.
You know, today, according to the Washington Post, Texas Tech University system said that they're going to stop using race when they admit people to their medical school. This is pressure coming from that man who lives in the house that enslaved people built. And Education Secretary, I'm not going to call her name again, they want to curtail the use of affirmative action in education. What do you say in response to that?
Well, it's kind of ironic because race has always been a factor in education in America. I mean, you know the numbers, we talked about it before. The top 10% of the population controls about 77% of the wealth. And our education system is basically designed to drill for talent in that top 10%. Of course, the problem is that white folks are only 58% of the population, but they make up 90% of that top 10%, which means that 30% of them are there, not because they're talented or qualified, but just because they were born there. And those are positions that other talented black, brown, and even poor people would have if we really had a merit-based education system. So now it's really been race-based all along. We're just trying to balance it out.
Quickly, because I want to get them in, but quickly, those folks who got busted for buying for buying seats, should they go to jail?
Well, you know, I don't know.
Some black folks have for something similar.
For something similar.
Like the sister who put her son into a school that was outside of her district, they put her in jail.
Yeah, well, see, I'm not aware of that, but I know this. There's not a whole lot of difference from what they do and what they did, and the guy that puts his name on a building, and because he was able to give $10 million to the school, he gets his son in.
Are you talking about Jared?
There's been a few of those. Yeah. But that's the way the system works. That's my point. And so they just took it to an extreme. But really, it's the same system at play, just they crossed the line and they got caught for it. So should they go to jail? Why not?
You know? Well, you know, as a Firebird, myself, very supportive. Yes, I'm very supportive of the efforts that at UDC. One of the things that I really appreciated a few years back when they started the community college at UDC. Because, you know, when I was there, you know, I bounced around forever and then I ended up finishing at UDC, but I did see that there was an opportunity there for the students. So a lot of the students would come, you know, from around the area, but they would come to class, you know, to these type of classes, you know, maybe not as prepared as, you know, just a general four-year college setting. So I appreciate the work that you guys are doing there at UDC. My homeboy from Jackson, Mississippi, Dr. Parter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we went to the same high school. And we went to Stillman College together.
There you go.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
so
okay.
You know, I like a lot of the things that you're doing there. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Running tight on time, so Cleo, question, comment.
Okay. When it came to taking these tests that determine intelligence, initially in my life, I had some challenges with them. Not because I wasn't intelligent, I finally learned later, but because the tests weren't built around my organic intelligence. And you mentioned something that I call organic intelligence when you mentioned that they're finding other means to determine people's capacity to operate in an academic context. What kind of approaches have you taken to determine people's their organic intelligence capacity to be involved in the academic institution?
Sure. So it's clear that standardized tests like SAT, ACT correlate directly with race and class.
Yep.
Because what they're designed to determine is whether you can be successful in the top 10% of the population, and who's going to be successful except the people in the top 10% of the population, right? So we've been looking at this tool that Gallup has called BP10.
BB10?
BP10. You can actually Google it. What it does is it assesses, it was designed to assess whether a student had high capacity for entrepreneurship.
Oh, wow.
And they've been doing this all over Mexico, and they've started to do it here. But what they really determine is whether or not these young people have grit. You know, they just keep showing up. And so we we did 400 in the district and identified the top 10. And of the top 10, 4 of them were from Ward 8 and weren't predicted to do well in school. But they kept showing up, and they kept showing up, and they kept showing up. And at the end of the first semester, they all had A's and B's. And so, you know, we know talent is not distributed based on race and class at birth.
Right.
Opportunity is, right? And so we're actually working now on designing a community through 16 reworked, redesigned academy that identifies raw talent and then doesn't let it get destroyed.
That's great.
By the forces of the three forces I told you that destroys talent over time.
Ron Mason, you're doing great work. We appreciate you. Thanks for coming out. We really appreciate it. We're going to move on to the next story. We don't have much time with it, but we got to do this story. You know, 45 is unable to articulate all too often. He said oranges instead of origins twice in less than a minute last week. Today there was, poor Malik, he can't take it. But, I mean, today there's an article in the Washington Post asking, can a president be too old? It talks about Trump, of course, but also points out that Joe Biden would be 82 at the start of his second term, and Bernie Sanders would be 83. And studies of old people find that between 16% and 23% of Americans over 65 experience some form of cognitive impairment. In other words, we are not just as sharp at 65 as we are at 50. Now, you cannot prove that by me. However, should age be a factor in a world where Dorothy Height went to work to the office, the NCAW office, every day in her hat and gloves until she became ill in her 90s? Or Dr. Janetta Cole, president of the board of the National Council of Negro Women, still at work and running all over the place at 82. Should we be thinking about age? Cleo, start with you.
Well, at the risk of starting controversy, black people, and you gave black examples, tend to have a resilience capacity.
Those my sorors and my friends.
That gets beyond other people. You remember they tried to enslave other folks and they didn't work out. They dropped dead, and they got people that were the more resilient.
Oh, Lord.
Suffer that horrible experience. So, I don't know. My mother and other people I know who are older, my mother is an attorney with her own law firm, and she's leaning on 80, and she hasn't missed a beat. So, I think it depends on the person.
My answer is no. It shouldn't be a factor. We can look at Justice Ginsburg. You know, she's in her 90s or almost 90s.
No, I think she's in her late 80s.
Yeah, well, you know, just as sharp as she was when she started there. So I don't think that race, I think it's ageist. I don't think that we should even be having a conversation about whether or not.
Over folks.
But you know, if you look at the article that was in the Post today, the guy who wrote it is in his 70s. He's a former editor of the Post, and he acknowledges that he's not what he used to be. He got to take more naps and all that. I'm like, okay, dude, you go. Ryan, you're sitting on the panel, so why don't you chime in for us?
So I think it depends on the person, but I will say this. Just judging from my career, these are high-stress jobs. Crises become normal situations. And at some point, at least for me personally, by the time I hit 70, I think I've had enough of it. And I also think you should make room for young talent to be able to. You should bring it along while you're there.
Agree with that.
Right. Yeah. Pass the torch.
We should be mentoring people. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's it for this edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm Dr. Julianne Malveaux, sitting in for Roland. Holla, y'all!
You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? The blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.